When we were initially going over the Martha Guzman case, preparing for this deep dive, it really struck me
Hmm.
just how easy it is for all of us, I think, to kind of get lost in the headlines.
Yeah,
But behind every single one of these cases,
right.
every story, there's a real human life.
Absolutely.
And in this instance, a young life
Yeah.
tragically cut short.
It's something that's just so important to remember right from the outset. I mean, cases involving domestic violence, they leave scars that run so much deeper than any physical ones?
Absolutely. And I think it's important to rewind the clock a little bit to kind of set the scene here. So we're going back to Miami in 2014. We have 11-year-old Martha Guzman. Sources describe her as a bright and cheerful kid, just full of life, living with her mom, Omri Alvarenga, and she was working incredibly hard to make ends meet as a single mother. Can you paint a picture for us of the environment surrounding this tragedy?
Yeah, absolutely. What really stands out, at least initially, is how it's kind of this very typical family structure.
Yeah.
We see a hardworking single parent trying to provide for their child.
Yeah.
It's a scenario that unfortunately so many people can relate to.
Right.
And I think that's part of what makes the events that unfold that much more impactful.
Right, because it's into this picture that Miguel Ruiz Lobo enters, Amori's ex-boyfriend. Even though they weren't together at this point, it seems like there was a lot of unresolved tension.
Oh, yeah.
The sources really highlight his temper
Yeah.
as a major point of concern.
It wasn't just a relationship that simply ended.
Mm.
When you really dig deeper, you start to see this pattern of volatility.
Okay.
And I think that's such a critical piece of information as we move forward with this story.
Hmm.
And if we kind of connect this to the bigger picture, I think it raises an important question about the dynamics of abusive relationships, even after they've supposedly ended.
Right.
I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but like that lingering anger, that resentment, it can be such a recipe for disaster.
It's like that feeling you get when you're, I don't know, reading a book or watching a movie,
Right.
and you just kind of sense that something bad is about to happen.
Yes.
You start to pick up on these subtle hints,
Absolutely.
almost like little red flags.
Exactly. Sadly, in this case, those red flags, they really do become central to the story.
So we're talking about June 22nd, 2014,
Right.
a seemingly ordinary summer day.
Mm-hmm.
And Amori leaves for work, believing her daughter is safe at home.
Right.
It's heartbreaking to think about what must have been going through her mind.
Later that day, when she returns home, to find Martha's body.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the initial shock sets in. For anyone following this case, I mean, the scene, as investigators found it, suggested a potential suicide.
Which is just unfathomable, right?
Yeah.
An 11-year-old? What could possibly lead a child to that?
That's a question.
It's just, I think that's where this case really gets under your skin.
Yeah.
It doesn't sit right from the
Mhm.
beginning.
No, you're absolutely right to feel that way. And thankfully, the investigators felt it too. I mean, even though the scene appeared to be a suicide, certain details just didn't add up. And this is where, that idea of a deep dive becomes so crucial. We have to look beyond the surface.
So tell me, at what point does Miguel Ruiz Lobo become the prime suspect?
Well, suspicion falls on Lobo almost immediately.
Okay.
There's his history of volatile behavior, of course. But on top of that, he also still had a key to Amori's apartment,
Wow.
which is a chilling detail, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. I mean, access to the scene is a major red flag in any investigation. But was there any hard proof linking him to the apartment that day?
There was. And it came from a source that's become, well, incredibly common these days: surveillance footage.
Of course, yeah.
Cameras actually captured Lobo entering the apartment building on the day of Martha's death.
Wow.
It's a stark reminder of how much technology is playing, an increasingly prominent role in solving these crimes, for better or for worse.
Right. It really makes you think about, how much we are all on camera these days. But in this case, that footage was absolutely crucial for the investigation. Did it directly place him with Martha, though?
Not directly, no.
Yeah.
It placed him at the scene, which was huge. But I think the real turning point, the real smoking gun, if you will, came with the forensic evidence.
Okay.
Remember how I mentioned the scene seemed staged
Right.
to look like a suicide? Well, when they looked at the nature of Martha's injuries, it told a very different story.
Okay, so walk us through that. What did the forensic analysis reveal?
Yeah, so without going into, to its graphic detail,
Yep.
the injuries simply weren't consistent with self-inflicted harm. The analysis showed definitively that someone else had inflicted those injuries on Martha. And
Right.
what's more, that this person had gone to great lengths to make it look like something it wasn't.
That sends chills down my spine. So if the prosecution believed that it wasn't a suicide, what was Lobo's motive for targeting Martha?
Right, so the prosecution's argument really centered on revenge. They believed that Lobo blamed Amori for the end of their relationship.
Okay.
And harming her daughter was his way of retaliating.
That's just horrific. And it circles back to those early descriptions of him, right?
Exactly.
The volatile temper, the inability to let go of anger. It paints a very disturbing picture.
It does. And while Lobo maintained his innocence throughout the trial, the
Yeah.
prosecution, they built a very compelling case against him. But there's another layer to this story that I think we need to unpack, and that's the impact on Amor.
Oh, absolutely.
I can't imagine what she was going through during all of this.
It's unimaginable not only losing her daughter in such a horrific way, but then having to navigate the complexities of a murder trial.
Hmm.
It's almost too much to bear. To have your world turned upside down like that, and then to have to relive those experiences in a courtroom facing the person accused of taking your child, it's almost unfathomable.
It really is. And her testimony, I have to say, it was one of the most powerful elements of the entire trial.
Hmm.
Sources describe Amori as incredibly strong. But as she's speaking, you can also feel that raw, visceral grief. As she talks about Martha, about the last time she saw her alive,
Right.
it's a stark reminder that even in the midst of such a tragedy, the human spirit can find a way to shine through.
It's a testament to her strength, especially in those moments when it would be so easy to just crumble. So after hearing, weeks of testimony, what did the jury decide?
Well, after careful deliberation of all the evidence, the jury returned a unanimous verdict. Guilty. Gil Ruiz Lobo was found guilty of first-degree murder.
In the sentence.
The judge sentenced Lobo to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Yeah.
So, I mean, legally speaking, justice was served. But
Nothing can truly bring Martha back.
exactly. And I think that's something that Amari's story so powerfully highlights. Rather than being consumed by grief, she channeled her pain into advocacy,
Right.
becoming a voice against domestic violence and its devastating impact on children.
It makes you wonder what drives someone like that. To experience such a profound loss and then turn that pain into a force for change. It's inspiring, really.
It is. And Amari's story reminds us that these tragedies, they don't simply end when the gavel falls in the courtroom.
Right.
The ripples extend far beyond the immediate family and community.
It makes you stop and think, what can we do as individuals, as a society, to support these families in crisis? How do we create a world where tragedies like this happen less often? And, these are tough questions, but they need to be asked.
They do.
Mm.
Because if there's one thing that this deep dive has really driven home for me, it's that this could happen anywhere, to anyone.
It's true.
It's a stark reminder that we need to be vigilant
Mm-hmm.
to recognize those warning signs of domestic violence and never underestimate its devastating impact.
If we can take away even one thing from Martha's story, let it be that. Let it be a call to action for all of us to be more aware, more supportive, and more committed to creating safer spaces for everyone.
Well said. It's a conversation that needs to continue.
Absolutely. To everyone listening, thank you for joining us for this deep dive. If anything we've discussed today has resonated with you, please don't hesitate to reach out for support. You'll find helpful resources listed in our show notes. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.
If you enjoyed this video and want to dive deeper into more cases like this one, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to like the video if you found the story compelling, and share it with your friends and family who might be interested in true crime and mysteries. By subscribing, you'll stay up to date with all our latest content and join a growing community of curious minds exploring the most fascinating cases. Click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything.